CJ, a lot has happened with the Toronto Blue Jays since we last spoke to you. They've won 2 games in a row. They had an off day on Thursday, so they're back at it in San Diego. And the rumor is it's all because of a pet dragon that the Jays. You've probably been part of teams where you're like, we need to switch something. So they got rid of the home run jacket. They have a red home run jacket, and they have a little dragon that someone found at like a dollar store. And they've won both games since they got the dragon.
Whatever it takes, right? I think ultimately that's what we always say with these kinds of things. The red jacket, listen, I think you do have to mix that part up a little bit. As much as the Jays, I think, maybe came up with the best home run celebration in baseball. I think they deserve credit for that because it's really cool. It feels super inclusive. It just, you get excited when you see your country on there, right? They did a really smart thing with that. At the same time, we see a lot of turnover with the home run celebration, sometimes year to year. So even though that was one of the best, I don't have a problem with necessarily switching it up and going to another color. As far as the dragon goes, this is not uncommon in baseball. It's a long season. Our sport lends itself to this kind of thing more than any other sport that is out there because of how long the season is, how monotonous it can get, how silly it can get sometimes. And you're always looking for something, the weirdest things. And sometimes guys are doing things, and they say when they hit a double right and they get out to second base and there's some kind of weird dance that maybe there's a little bit more behind the story that we never find out. Maybe that's probably a good thing. But I like this kind of stuff. Like you need these kind of things, especially the kind of season I think that the Jays are having. A little bit of up, a little bit of down, right? You're trying to get out of this rut and get going. You got to keep it loose. You got to be able to have a little bit of fun. And I think, when you do something like this too, it's recognizing that something needs to happen in the clubhouse to maybe loosen guys up. As silly as it might seem, as angry as it might make the salty fan that guys are goofing around, this is a good thing for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, CJ, I want to stick with this point for a second here because you know as well as anyone. It seems like almost a silly topic, but for a team who's, the sum does not equal their parts the way it has the whole season long, sometimes maybe a little bit of a inner clubhouse cohesion change, something that brings them together like this could turn out as something of a rallying point where you actually get to, just loosen up, as you say. Can you think of any times during your own career where something the equivalent of this may have happened?
Yeah, so different times called for different kind of actions over the years, but absolutely. But just real quick, going back to your point, is also we're getting obviously now just a series away, 3 games away from the All-Star game. When you're having kind of a down season, even though they're still in this thing, the All-Star game, you start kind of keeping an eye on it and looking forward to getting there. And if you're not careful, you fall flat the rest of the way, and then you limp into the All-Star break. And the Jays can't afford to do that, right? So a little something like this that injects some energy, again, a little bit of fun, rally around it, goof around. Again, our sport is probably best at this kind of thing, is a real positive. So from that standpoint, yes, I would say that, there are different things that we've done. It wasn't so much the dugout stuff because that didn't happen nearly as much where there was some kind of dugout mascot or whatever it would be, but definitely actions that you took. And a lot of times it was veteran guys understanding and seeing a spot and say, hey, we need to get out. A couple of years ago with the Atlanta Braves, they were struggling and they decided, man, we got to all head out and have a few drinks together and hang out and relax a little bit. That doesn't happen nearly as much, and sometimes it happens in smaller groups, but it's still really good. It's still really good, I think, to get out there and do something social, because what's happening in this generation now, what I've noticed since I've been now covering a team for, I guess I'm, about 10 years into this now, between the Rangers and the Atlanta Braves, is that guys have become more and more introverted, and they don't go out nearly as much. Now, part of that is because everybody has a phone. You don't want to get in any trouble, right? Somebody wants to catch something the wrong way and make a story out of something that's not there. So there's a lot of hanging in your room. There's a lot of video game time, even with your teammates. He might be 3 doors down in the hotel room, and that's kind of how you're hanging out. So you don't get nearly that. You don't get certainly what you saw back in the 70s and 80s where guys are hanging around after a game and throwing back a few. It's just less and less in the game. That's where some of that camaraderie or just blowing off some steam becomes really important. I will tell you one. You asked me if we've ever done it, and there's a bunch of them over the years, but we were having a rough go of it in Boston when I was with the Tigers, but we were in Boston, had a rough series. We had like an earlier game. I think it was on a Saturday and still one more game to go. And me and Gabe Kapler, who Dan and I both worked with over at Fox, Matt Anderson, another player, went out on the field. We stayed in the clubhouse, had a few drinks, and then went back out on the field probably a good 2 hours after the game and ended. The ballpark was completely empty, and started playing home run derby in Fenway. And it was so much fun. And it was a couple of pitchers that were out there too. So we're taking our swings from the mound and just trying to go over the green monster. It was so fun. I think the clubhouse guy probably hated us for it, but you're looking for things like that to take the edge off a long season.
I thought you were going to say Gabe went out in his leopard print Speedo, which he was pictured in at one time.
That's right. He did not.
So what's the conversation, the going into an all-star break conversation that a manager has? You know, the Jays, if they win, they sweep this series, they're on a 5-game win streak. Schneider's saying, go have fun. You guys earned it. If that doesn't happen, is he having the conversation and saying, guys, lay low, don't do anything dumb? What is the manager saying?
We'll never do anything dumb, period, regardless of how things are going, right? Good or bad like that. And these guys, again, I think they're a lot smarter. Guys still make a mistake here and there. It certainly does pop up. But I think the message is, like you said, you hope you have some momentum. You hope you take this series from the Padres who are struggling, right? There's an opportunity there to do that in San Diego. A lot of guys are going to be going separate ways at the end of that, right? And we'll see. And through the Jays, like some guys are just going to go home straight from San Diego. So the plane's not going to be nearly the same plane ride back to Toronto afterwards. But there is a message there. And I don't think you necessarily have to tell guys, like, don't do anything dumb. But you do sometimes have to tell guys to relax. And that's the part that can be hard. Yeah, I said that, guys will be looking forward to that all-star break and getting it. But if you're having a rough go of it, some guys try to work through it. And that's one of the bigger mistakes that you can make when you have these 4 days that are coming up for all-star. It's not going to be a complete 4 days. But I would imagine John Schneider wants guys to take at least 2 really clean off days where you're not doing anything. You're not thinking about baseball as much as you can. It's hard to do. Go relax with your family, your friends, whatever it takes. Get that reset. I'm guessing they have, maybe if you want to work out on Wednesday, it's optional. Let's get everybody back together by Thursday. So we're doing something, and then you kind of get off and running. But the message, regardless, probably of how the weekend goes, even if it went terrible, they got swept and they got shut out for 3 games. He's not going to be screaming and yelling on a Sunday before they head off to their all-star break. It's going to be trying to find a way to go ahead, relax, get rejuvenated, and let's take care of this thing after the all-star break.
And speaking of going into the all-star break, as you mentioned, they go into the all-star break playing the San Diego team, also not having a particularly great year. And Shane Bieber takes the hill tonight. Yeah. Well, Shane, take the over Bieber. If there's any team in which he could possibly rebound and get a bit of a psychological boost from, just forget the case, forget numbers like that. He just needs to have fewer runs scored against him, maybe not give up so many home runs. This is a San Diego team in which he has a chance to do that with.
He should. It's interesting. I just saw them not that long ago, probably about 2 or so weeks ago. And if you look at the roster of the San Diego Padres, the way their season is going is kind of befuddling because it's still a really deep roster. And you see guys that have really good track records on the back of their baseball cards, but they're not winning. That offense looked like it was starting to come out of it a little bit, right? So as an example, Manny Machado is not having a great year. It doesn't mean Manny Machado can't take advantage of mistakes in the strike zone still, right? Even though it hasn't been nearly as consistent. And the concern for me actually would be in the sense that, with Bieber not having that big velocity, too many mistakes over the plate because these guys not having great years but are good players, you take nothing for granted, right? That would be the concern if you're looking for kind of the negative side. JP Sears is going tonight, the left-hander for the San Diego Padres. His first start back happened to be against the Braves, and I saw it, and he absolutely shoved. And he really struggled. And then he struggled in his next one after that, but he struggled his minor league numbers were not particularly good. Like, he still has it in him to get up for a big game because he's kind of fighting for, his spot in the roster right now and has to be consistent. So even though he's not a hard thrower, he's a pretty crafty lefty. He's ultra competitive. So while on paper, there's party that feels good about it. Like we always say, you just cannot take anybody really lightly. So I'd be a little bit, not saying worried, but make no assumptions about the San Diego Padres, because when you have an underperforming team, and it has been a bad run for them here lately, they're at some point going to snap out of it. Don't let them do it against you.
JP Sears, heir to the Sears
it's no longer
department
a fortune.
store fortune, so he's not set to inherit anything. You know what, CJ? Something that I think we really need to tip our hat to Jays management is, without Dylan Cease and Kaz Okamoto, where would the Jays be? 2 of the guys they got in the offseason, if they didn't have them, what would the Jays look like?
Yeah, a lot worse, right? I mean, 2.5 back right now of a wild card, again, as we talk about, is still within striking distance. So it is smart, right? Give them the credit. We talked about it when they signed Dylan Cease. You kind of knew what you were going to get, which was usually going to be high pitch counts. He's going to keep you in games. He's got really good swing and miss. The contract is a little lengthy. He hasn't missed time since he had that Tommy John back in high school. So he's probably going to miss time at some point along these 7 years. But as it stands right now, you're absolutely right.
He's a Cy
And the
Young candidate.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the last one obviously was unbelievable. You love that he goes back out there and gets a chance to throw the no-hitter. You love John Schneider's comments after the fact and kind of respecting the idea, right? The Jays have only had one, and not that it's all about that, but he felt like it was in a safe range to go ahead and go for it. Dylan Cease already has one under his belt. He's going into the All-Star break. He's going to get extra rest. Like all of it made sense at a time where we just saw two guys have perfect games through 6 and through 7, and were taken out of the game. Right. And just absolutely sending fans into a fury about it and kind of where we are. So you love the old school feel and John Schneider giving Dylan Cease a chance to go for that no hitter, even though he ultimately did not get it. But you're absolutely right. He's been unbelievable. I think with Akamoto, we didn't know, right? We as we talked about, when Japanese hitters come over, it could be a mixed bag. You just don't know what's going to happen as they start to see this level of pitching night in and night out. He has been excellent. We were talking about Murakami for a while in Chicago, but went on the IL. Certainly good for the game. But you're absolutely right that the Jays were able to identify a couple of big pieces. They spent certainly some big money to make it happen. But this season, I don't think we'd be talking about the hope that is still there, certainly without these two guys.
And speaking of that hope, I mean, obviously the run to the World Series last year was sparked by an incredible second half run, an incredible playoff run. Things are a little different this year with the expectations and the signings and all of that stuff. But what the American League's been weak, and that's why they're still in the race. What's
Yep.
the cutoff date here to truly turn this thing around?
So we keep saying that you're looking for the teams that are going to make the jump. Like who's going to get it figured out, right? And the Blue Jays certainly are in that class of teams that should be able to figure out and make a run. And like you said, one way or the other, a lot of these teams are in that spot, and nobody seems to necessarily be grabbing the bull by the horns. If this continues till like August 1st, it's going to be kind of a mess. And I don't mean just for the Jays. I mean what's going on in the American League wild card right now, because it could end up really slowing down the trade deadline. You don't want to necessarily have your fans checking out because you've waved the white flag, even though you're somewhat in this thing and still have a chance to get to the postseason. So what you may see is some of these, what we call still trades where you're still contending, right? Where is there a way to make a trade while you're giving up a piece that maybe is going to be a free agent, but you bring a controllable piece back that can still help you now? Right, the Brewers have done this pretty consistently throughout the years because they move on from guys that are about to be free agents and they want to take advantage of it, but still find a way to contend and compete. They did it with Josh Hader. They've just done it with Devin Williams as well a couple of years ago. So they're not afraid. It's possible that you're still in it, and it's not necessarily a fire sale. I think sometimes when we get to the trade deadline, people start talking like it's one or the other, right? We're going to go all the way in or we're going all the way out. No, there's a middle ground there somewhere. Where you can still make moves that make some sense, but you're not necessarily doing one or the other. That feels like a lot of these middle of the road teams. That's where they are right now with this thing. But hopefully people start to separate themselves, because we don't want a dud of a deadline. And you don't want a deadline where there's too many teams that have a chance and then nobody's really moving big pieces.
Are you going to the All-Star game?
I am not going to the All-Star game. I'm going to take my couple of days at home. We had it here in Atlanta last year, which was nice. But I'll be sitting back and watching it like everybody else. We got Home Run Derby, which is on Netflix for the first time, which will be interesting to see. Yeah. And, they had the first game of the year, and now they have the Home Run Derby. And then we have the draft. And I was kind of looking, and I forgot about this. One of the downsides to what happened last year, besides just losing, of course, in that World Series and in a Game 7 for the Jays, was because of the money that they spent. There's that kind of fourth tier where you get penalized. And when you do it, your top pick goes backwards by 10 spots. So the Jays' first pick this year is not till 39. And so we'll see how the draft goes. Now, what it does give them an opportunity maybe to get a little bit creative with the money and take some chances later in the draft. I know their first round picks, Savage has been really good. Manoah, of course, ends up having the injuries, but had a little bit of a run. But their first round picks haven't been great, over the last decade or so. They're not going to have a really high pick this year. And so it could be about maybe taking some chances in the draft. And the way you do that because of the slot system is you look for a guy who say, he might not sign for X amount of dollars, but can you catch him a little later and maybe push because, again, you don't have really high picks. So it could be an interesting draft, but it's one of those ones for the draft folks that they're certainly happy that your team's competitive. The ones that are in charge of making the picks, they don't love that it cost you 10 spots in the draft and they're all the way down to 39, but that's the give and take that goes with this thing.
Well, there was around 100 potential draft picks on the field in Toronto yesterday. I was
Mm,
one of them, and it was a Jays fantasy camp kind of thing where you get to pitch, you get to hit, you get to shag fly balls, you get to field ground balls, turn double plays. And I've been on the field before, but I've never been on the playing surface, and I got a new appreciation of the real estate that the outfielders have to cover.
mm. Yeah,
How
it's
hard
a
it
good one.
is, how much it takes to throw a ball. Like I hit 60. I'm not embarrassed to
No,
admit it. And I thought to routinely throw 100 and to do that
yeah,
daily, how your arm doesn't fall off. And also the density of the infield fake dirt in Toronto, I couldn't
yeah.
imagine sliding on that because all I would think about is I'm going to have road rash.
Yeah, for sure. And guys still get it, but you're absolutely right. I think it is good to get down there too. And just I know it's, just that fantasy camp situation, but kind of how fast everything moves, how fast the ground balls are you were talking about, how much ground you got to cover in the outfield. I get it. These guys are paid to be able to do that. But it's a good reminder every once in a while of the reality of what's actually happening down on the field and how big of a deal it is. The velocity is something that you should be proud of, right? It wasn't in the 50s. We got you to at least 60. So that's good news. Listen, man, I don't know if I could get there right now. My arm is an absolute mess. The bigger thing for me is what I'm most curious about is how you felt the next day. Because if you're airing it out, if you were really giving it everything you had to get to 60, there had to be some legitimate soreness the next day.
It's my legs. Because they had
Really?
us do a 40-yard
That's where the
sprint.
power comes from, Dan.
We had to test
Yeah.
our vertical, a 40-yard sprint, and a
What?
standing long jump. I'm like, we don't need to do this. I
Yeah,
don't need to
it's
know.
not a combine, it's fantasy camp.
Well, it was
I-
a fantasy camp combine.
Oh, okay.
I've got one last question for you here, CJ. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned the Blue Jays will have the 39th overall pick. Looking at the list right now, ranked number 39, 18-year-old Will Brick, who is a catcher for the Christian Brothers High School in Tennessee and a Mississippi
Okay.
State commit. However, if you scroll down the list to number 68, do you think the
Hmm.
Blue Jays would be willing to drop their pick and take Dan O'Toole?
It's possible. And listen, don't get too excited about those lists. They missed a lot of times.
You got to
guys see
draft
it
a
in
guy with
football.
the last name Brick.
I would think so.
They don't need any more
It would be a
catching.
powerhouse. Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too. You don't in our sport compared to the others, you don't draft on positional need, right? You go
Yeah.
for the best player because it's going to be a couple of years before you get there anywhere anyway. But even in the NFL and the NBA, like those mock drafts, they do the best they can. There's always going to be some big misses. It is way harder to do in baseball. To sit there and try to figure out, what's going to happen with the draft and slotting and everything else. And listen, like Jacob Mizorowski, right, who's crushing it with the Brewers right now, was the second round pick. So that 39th pick still has a lot of value. Obviously, you don't have to want anything above it to protect it to kind of get deep enough. So a little extra pressure to really see what is out there, but there's absolutely potentially impact big leaguers at that number. There's going to be guys. We'll go back and look at this draft, 5 years later. And there will be guys underneath the 39th pick that ended up being impactful in the big leagues. And you go, man, why didn't they pick that guy? But that's just the way our sport works.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Mizorowski, how did you feel the other night when he threw the fastest pitch in MLB history and it landed 15 rows into the stands for a home run?
Yeah,
Pulled that pitch.
I don't want to spoil like all that's going on, but I'm kind of over it. Like we get it. He's got the most unbelievable arm in the game. I'm done counting how many times he's thrown a pitch over 100 miles an hour. Like we get all of that, right? That's fantastic. And it's wild to see. And he's young and he's goofy. And every time I watch him, I feel like I'm watching the Little League World Series with that 112-year-old who's like 6'5", right? And because he's still like a kid, he's got kid energy to him, and he's out there having a good time. And he's just dominating. So it's fun to watch when it's not against your team.
CJ, I'll let you have the opportunity to have a proud dad moment. Will there come a time we'll hear a Nitkowski called at the MLB draft? Another Nitkowski?
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. So my youngest son is 18. He's going to go pitch at Georgia Tech next year. He did get some calls this week from some teams just kind of putting out feelers to see what his interest level was. Because now in the draft, what has changed dramatically. So when I got drafted in 94, it was unlimited, right? You could go forever. And that's how Mike Piazza got picked in the 63rd round. Then we dropped to 50 rounds. Then it was 40. Now we're down to 20. And so what happens is you don't take those flyers on high school kids really anymore like they used to. I told them I had a pretty good chance if this was, a 40-round draft in the old days, you would have gotten drafted. A team would take you in the, 30th round and see if they could convince you not to go to college. It's not like that anymore. Now you got to feel pretty good about the fact that most of your draft picks are going to sign. You still take some chances here and there. And for him, and while it was really fun to get some phone calls and talk about it a little bit. I think based on where he is right now and what kind of signing bonus he could garner, it's going to make a lot more sense for him to go to college, and we'll see. I mean, you just, you never know, but he loves the game. He's passionate about it, and he's going to have to survive pitching in the ACC, and Tech's a great school. We're excited for him, but it is a great place to hit. I mean, it's not a great place to pitch. So I'm like, brace yourself, man. Like, that you're putting up those 1 ERAs in high school, that's going to go away. So get ready. But we're excited. We're proud of him. And we'll continue to chase the dream.
That's pretty damn cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It is fun.
Okay, we'll have a great All-Star break.
All right. Thanks, guys. You too.